There was a time when late-night television wasn't scripted, sanitized, or carefully managed. It was live, unpredictable, and often completely unhinged. And no show captured that beautiful chaos better than The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Over 3 decades, Johnny hosted more than 20,000 guests, from presidents to comedians to rock stars. But some of those guests weren't exactly sober. Tonight, we're revisiting the 8 drunkest, most chaotic guests ever to sit across from Johnny Carson. Moments so wild, they left the audience howling, the crew panicking, and Johnny himself speechless. Let's dive into the wildest nights in late-night TV history. 1. Oliver Reed, the British Hurricane. When you think of British drinking legends, Oliver Reed is near the top. The man didn't just drink, he performed it. Reed, the brawny star of Oliver and Gladiator, was infamous for downing pints before interviews. But on The Tonight Show, his appearance in 1975 was something else entirely. He stumbled on stage already several drinks deep, swinging his arm around Johnny's shoulder as if they were old pub buddies. Carson tried to keep things moving, but Reed wasn't interested in small talk. He interrupted questions, made faces at the audience, and at one point began reciting Shakespeare while hiccuping between lines. The audience roared. Johnny, ever the professional, leaned back with that classic Carson smirk, the one that said, "Well, here we go again." What made the moment unforgettable wasn't the embarrassment, it was the charm. Reed was a mess, yes, but he was also magnetic. His drunken charisma filled the room, and when he ended the segment with a heartfelt slurred toast to friendship, even Johnny raised his glass of water in solidarity. 2. Dean Martin, the king of cool and cocktails. Dean Martin didn't just act tipsy, he built a career around it. Known for his effortless charm and whiskey-smooth voice, Martin appeared countless times on Carson's show, always with a drink in hand. But one particular night in 1972 stands out. Martin sauntered onto the stage holding a tumbler of what was definitely not apple juice. The smell of scotch filled the air as he greeted Johnny with a mock salute. The band struck up "That's Amore," and Martin pretended to conduct them, badly. For the next 10 minutes, Martin was pure comedic chaos, forgetting his lines, teasing Johnny, and occasionally breaking into song mid-sentence. The audience was in hysterics. At one point, he leaned over and whispered, loud enough for the mic to catch, "Johnny, I think my glass is empty." Without missing a beat, Carson replied, "Dean, so is your filter." That was the magic. Carson knew exactly how to balance Martin's looseness with razor-sharp timing. The segment became a classic snapshot of an era when being a little drunk on national TV wasn't scandalous. It was entertainment. 3. Peter O'Toole, the gentleman of Mayhem. Peter O'Toole was a man of incredible talent and legendary excess. The Lawrence of Arabia star once joked, "I don't drink anymore, but I don't drink any less either." His visit to The Tonight Show in the late 1970s has since become myth. He arrived in a tailored suit, appearing completely composed, until he began to speak. His stories flowed like the whiskey he'd clearly enjoyed before walking on stage. At one point, O'Toole pulled out a silver flask mid-interview and poured himself a shot right there on camera. The crowd erupted. Johnny just raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Well, we're in for a long one." O'Toole told tales of movie sets, near-death adventures, and pub fights in London, all with that poetic Irish wit that made you forgive the slurring. The man was chaos wrapped in charm. By the end of the segment, even Johnny was laughing too hard to continue. When the camera cut to commercial, O'Toole lifted his glass one last time and toasted the audience. It was television gold. 4. Richard Harris, the singing Irish storm. If O'Toole was unpredictable, his drinking buddy Richard Harris was a full-blown tempest. The Camelot and Harry Potter actor was known for turning interviews into performances, and his 1973 appearance proved it. Harris walked out singing. Literally, he sang his own name, missed his mark, and nearly tripped over the microphone cable. Johnny welcomed him with a grin, clearly bracing for the ride. Harris didn't sit, he posed. He told stories of wild nights with O'Toole and Burton, recited poetry, and even tried to convince the band leader to join him in a duet. When Carson asked, "Richard, how much have you had tonight?" Harris replied, "Not enough to make you look handsome, Johnny." The audience roared. Johnny laughed so hard, he dropped his cue cards. It was one of those nights that reminded viewers why live television could never be replaced. 5. Elizabeth Taylor, the Diamond Queen of Drama. Elizabeth Taylor didn't appear drunk often, but when she did, the world noticed. Her most talked about Tonight Show appearance came in the early 1980s during a phase when she was struggling publicly with alcohol. She arrived dazzling in diamonds, but her speech was slow, her laughter too loud, and her responses oddly offbeat. When Johnny gently asked about her upcoming film, she misheard and started talking about her perfume line instead. The audience tittered. Johnny kept the segment afloat with grace. At one point, Taylor accidentally called Carson darling, then corrected herself by saying, "Oh, Johnny, I call everyone that when I've had just a sip." The room exploded in laughter. Johnny smiled knowingly. The moment was messy, human, and oddly sweet, a reminder that even icons could have bad nights under the bright lights. 6. Orson Welles, the Drunken Philosopher. Orson Welles was many things: genius, director, magician, but sober on The Tonight Show was rarely one of them. When he appeared in the early 1970s, Welles brought a tumbler of brandy and a booming, theatrical voice. He slurred slightly as he spoke about art, politics, and the death of conversation in America. Johnny, ever quick, countered, "Seems conversation isn't the only thing dying tonight." The audience howled. Welles laughed, refilled his glass, and continued delivering monologues that were equal parts brilliant and incoherent. Despite everything, his presence commanded respect. Watching him, you didn't see a drunk man. You saw a mind so vast it could barely contain itself, spilling ideas as fast as the liquor spilled over his fingers. 7. Shelley Winters, the Unpredictable Tornado. Shelley Winters was always unpredictable, but add alcohol, and she became unstoppable. Her most infamous appearance came in 1975. From the moment she sat down, she interrupted Johnny, challenged his jokes, and even took off her shoes on air. When guest Oliver Reed joined later in the episode, the chaos doubled. The two began trading stories and mock flirting, while Carson just sat back, letting the madness unfold. The highlight came when Shelley accused Johnny of not paying attention. Johnny smirked and said, "I'm just trying to survive." It was messy, loud, and absolutely unforgettable, one of the wildest segments in Tonight Show history. 8. Truman Capote, the literary loose cannon. Of all Johnny's guests, none blurred the line between brilliance and disaster quite like Truman Capote. The in cold blood author appeared multiple times on the show, but one night in 1972 is legendary. Clearly tipsy, Capote slurred his words, rambled through bizarre anecdotes, and at one point began whispering secrets into Johnny's ear. On live television, Carson tried to steer the conversation, but Capote kept drifting into tangents about New York society and his feuds with other writers. The audience wasn't sure whether to laugh or worry. Finally, Johnny leaned forward and asked, "Truman, are you okay?" Capote blinked, then said softly, "Darling, I was born okay." The world just couldn't handle it. It was haunting, hilarious, and strangely beautiful. A man both broken and brilliant, unraveling in real time. Those were nights when television felt alive, unfiltered, spontaneous, human. Before PR teams, media training, and social media outrage, stars were allowed to be themselves, flawed, messy, real. Johnny Carson never mocked or humiliated them. He guided the chaos, finding humor and humanity in every stumble and slur. That's why those moments endure. Not because someone was drunk on air, but because they showed the raw, unpredictable magic of being human in front of millions. And maybe that's what we've lost in modern television, the courage to let things go wrong and the grace to laugh when they do. Because in the end, The Tonight Show wasn't just about jokes or celebrities. It was about moments, real, imperfect, unforgettable moments that could never be scripted again.